So we're going to talk to Bobby from Kentucky, who wants to ask why theists divert from the question, what is the proof for God? Is that right, Bobby?
Yes.
Go for it. Did I
First
word
off,
that properly?
y'all having a good day?
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right. I'm not really a new atheist. Since a little kid, I've always, what's the best term for it? Had doubts about it. And, but I was always forced to go to church up until I was like 16 or 17. Yeah. But I just recently started watching, like the last year or so, started watching a lot of atheist videos and live streams and stuff. And my thing is, when theists get on the live streams or whatever to debate, there never is really a debate. Every time they put out their whole argument, and then the host of the show will take and counter argue. They never do answer those arguments or questions or anything. They always just keep pushing their point.
Yeah. You see this like so much with all like beyond religion, but generally people who have these kind of belief systems that they don't really want, they didn't reach them by rational thought and evidence. They're things they already believed, or they were told when they were younger, or it's just kind of makes sense to them, and they don't really want to logically go through it, because if they logically went through it, they wouldn't end up there. What they want is to just say stuff that convinces them they don't need to think anymore. Like it's like an excuse. If I say this, then I don't have to think about it anymore, and it goes away. And you see this so much. I mean, I do a lot of arguing with idiots on Twitter, and like how you just described it is so true. They, that people will say something, and you come up with a counter argument, and they either just say the same thing again as if you hadn't ever said anything, or they just change the subject. Yes. And you're like, where's this argument? And then they all complain that you won't argue with them. Oh, you're too scared to argue. It's like, well, I'm trying to have an argument, and you seem to be just trying to convince yourself that you're already right.
And that's what cognitive dissonance is. It's putting that space between like having to think about it or having to challenge. It's having the belief and trying to justify and trying to like work backwards to make it make sense in your head, but without having to make it make sense.
Yeah. And also you get to stay on your like, sorry, Bobby. You also get to kind of like stay on your team, because I think a lot of people see this as kind of like a team thing. And in some way, maybe this show could help break down that kind of them versus us thing, because we like to have less confrontational, longer discussions. But I do like the confrontational ones too. But I think that often it's like, oh yeah, but they're atheists, they're our enemies, or they're Muslims, they're our enemies, or they're Christians, they're our enemies, and it's like, therefore they have to be wrong. So anything they say, they're trying to trick you, or they're stupid, or like and it's you just have your little dunk. You say your it's almost like when you see people who support sports teams, and they'll be like, yeah, we beat you 3-0, and they're like, yeah, but we beat you 4-0 the other time, and it's like, so you both just have a thing that you say. It's not really a proof of who's better or anything.
It's also meant to just like spark that outrage. Like if they can just keep talking shit basically without ever providing evidence, especially on Twitter, it's and then you just get madder and madder, and it's not a good look. That's what they want. They're trying to frustrate you.
Yeah. What were you adding, Bobby?
I'll go ahead.
No, you go on. Go on. I was just asking what you thought.
I was having a civil conversation with a family member the other day, and I sat there and told him the way I look at religion, basically most religion was set up back before we knew any better, back before we as a society knew any better. And as time progressed, we started finding out stuff through science, through all kinds of processes. We started finding out why lightning happened, why solar eclipses and all this other stuff happened. And we can explain that now. And I told him the way I look at it, basically, when you're a little kid, you believe in Santa Claus, you believe in the Tooth Fairy, you believe in this and that. But as you get older, you find out your parents was doing it, family members were doing it. And that, I told him that's the way religion should be looked at, because it
For real.
Oh, I mean, you're right.
For
I
real,
do
yes.
agree. Yeah,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
agree.
Yes, you are so right. It's like, why do you stop believing in the Tooth Fairy your parents told you were real? Why do you stop believing in Santa your parents told you were real? But for some reason, when your parents told you God was real, you keep believing that one? Like, why?
mainly because they want to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
comforting for sure. I mean, and that's religion in general, right? It's it started back before the Bible. It was like all of these myths to explain those things you were talking about, lightning and why floods happen, or all of these little things that happen that people were like, why? Oh, it must be this God or whatever. And then we sort of evolved and realized like that's not what it is. But for some reason, the religion thing stuck. And that's, from my view, it's just this fear of the unknown. It's this fear of dying, of death, not knowing what happens after. And so being afraid. So it's like we have to come up with an answer. We have to come up with a fantasy that we would love to be true. And then we invest so deeply in it. It's really difficult to let go of that, but it's just for control. And that's kind of what the people in charge, are always doing. If they can keep you afraid enough, they know that they can control you. And what's the more ultimate mystery fear than death?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, absolutely.
that-
And they do it with other things. Like, I mean, that's what this kind of culture war stuff is about, is finding new excuses to make you afraid of people and things. And
Yes.
like you should be afraid of dying, and you should be afraid of these scary people who you don't know, and you should be afraid of it does work.
Change.
It drives change, exactly. And if you can also, I think that probably most, or I mean, in history, obviously most great powers and people in charge had religion as like one of the tools for doing that.
Yes,
And it makes
tools.
sense to have a state religion. Even if you're an atheist, if you're a dictator and you want to control people, take up a religion, make up your own one, or just take a different one and put your own twist on it. I mean, then you will get
I'm
more
sure
support.
that's been done in
Yeah.
history too.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what they're doing right now. Take your religion and put your own twist on it. And it's like, just going back to everything that Jesus taught in the Bible, it doesn't seem like those things, even if you're just looking at the character of Jesus, it was very much about acceptance and love and charity and all these socialist ideas. But they're putting their own twist on it. And it's same thing with abortion. Like, it doesn't talk about abortion in the Bible because they didn't really know about it, except you could drink some herbs and have an abortion. And I think there's like a recipe for that in the Bible. And so, but somehow the people in charge have twisted it to their own interpretation to say that like the Bible's against this thing when there's not even any proof.
And
there's no
even
evidence of that.
historically in Christianity, they
Wasn't the
haven't
Bible-
they haven't been talking about abortion for hundreds of years. It's just a
Yeah.
recent last century issue. Sorry, Bob,
Yep.
what were you saying?
Wasn't the Bible's version of abortion something like throwing babies off cliffs or something like that?
That's a separate quote from the Bible, but it is a great one.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a thing whenever I think of when people say, oh, Jesus was nice and they had all these socialist ideas, like Jesus specifically, the separate Jesus character was. but Jesus is only 1/3 of the Trinity, and another third of it is the Old Testament God, who is a fucking dickhead. And
Totally.
he is nothing like Jesus.
Murdered
He's
millions
like,
of people.
yeah, literally created the concept of murder. Like he's a prick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I see it, I mean, I'm not going to take up all your time because I'm pretty sure there's theists that's wanting to call in and argue.
Yeah, we've got some queued up. We've got some queued up.
But the way I see it, yeah, you could be afraid of death. That just gives you more reason to want to live life. And
hell yeah, Bobby, you got it.
It's better to live life without extra baggage of worrying what's coming next when you're more concerned about what you got now.
You
Absolutely.
nailed it. Yes.